Hi, it is me, Pico Rich Girl again, and on the 10th of December this year, something great happened. And this great thing that I'm talking about is the fact that I reached 1K subscribers, and I seriously cannot thank you enough for the support. It means the world to me. And to celebrate this huge achievement, I decided to talk about my history with Splatoon, from how I heard about it, to how it changed my life for the better, knock on wood, to how it became not just my favorite video game franchise, but one of my favorite pieces of media ever. If you ask me what my favorite movie is or movie franchise, I would say that I don't have one. But if you ask me about a favorite video game franchise, then it would be 10 times easier for me to answer because there are many movies that I love and hate, but I never consider one particular movie to have an impact on my life or me as a person. And there isn't a movie that stands out to me. Just saying. Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe for more Splatoon content. Anyways, let's get into the beginning. So before I say how exactly I got introduced to this masterpiece, I will give you a little bit of backstory. So it was June of 2019, a month before my birthday, and I was both a huge Mario fan since I was like 5 or 6 years old, and also Crash Bandicoot fan from recently, I guess from like May of 2019, like yeah, around there, because I was the most into 3D platformer games at the time, and I still am to this day. Back then, I was the most hyped for the upcoming back then game Mario Maker 2, and I used to watch so many videos about the game on YouTube, including a tournament before the release of the game. Before the tournament started, they advertised other tournaments for other games, and this was when I saw Splatoon 2's name for the first time. And judging by the logo, I thought it was a baby's first puzzle game with paint everywhere, and then didn't think much about it for the rest of my day. I don't remember if it was the next day or a couple of days later, but anyways, one morning I see on my YouTube homepage a video showing all Mario Kart 8 Deluxe characters, and I clicked on the video out of pure interest. At first there weren't any characters I didn't recognize because I was very familiar with Mario's franchise, but then I saw the Inklings for the first time. I remember I was so confused when I saw them because not only they were the first characters I couldn't recognize from the roster, but they didn't even look like they belonged in the Mario universe. Editing Pinky right there, and if you ask me did I recognize Link or the Animal Crossing characters there, and just like with the Inklings I didn't, but I just wasn't interested in them for some reason. Then I remembered that Splatoon 2 game I saw in the advertising before the tournament of Mario Maker 2 and thought, I think those two orange and blue characters come from that puzzle game I saw. I don't know why did I think Splatoon was a puzzle game by just looking at the logo, and it still baffles me to this day. Then it was on the exact same day when YouTube then recommended me a video comparing Splatoon versus Splatoon 2. Like, I didn't even search for it, and when I saw the thumbnail featured that weird blue boy from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I was kinda proud of myself for guessing correctly that those characters in Mario Kart were from the Splatoon game, and then I decided to watch the video. I wanted to create tension, okay? This was my first time ever seeing gameplay from Splatoon, and it wasn't how I imagined it. Guess what happened after I watched the whole video? PUV, that's you.
Well, you loved the gameplay on the screen and immediately became a fan of Splatoon.
And if you thought that, then you were totally wrong. Because I found back then the gameplay very confusing because it wasn't like either Mario or like Crash Bandicoot. And as a result, I didn't get hooked into it, no pun intended. I remember exactly what I said to myself back then. Well, I think the only franchise of Nintendo I will ever be a fan of is Mario. And I said it with a big disappointment, because for years I died to know what were Nintendo's other franchises like, since Mario was the only one I grew up knowing. I was disappointed because I thought that all of their franchises are platformers like Mario but with different art styles, world and characters. The reason why I was only into platforming games growing up it's because I was the most familiar with them and they were the most fun for me to play. So yeah. I also remember when I saw the Squid Sisters at Off the Hook for the first time from the same Splatoon vs Splatoon 2 video. I remember thinking how weird they looked to me back then. Almost like I saw entirely different characters because of how much my opinion has changed since then. And now let's move on to the next chapter. So let's fast forward a bit from June of 2019 to March of 2020. This was the last time in my life so far when I was so depressed that I hated myself. Knock on wood. Don't get me wrong, I'm still to this day sometimes depressed, but not to the extent of back then. But let's just not talk about it. Back then, I was always getting sick since January, so I spent 3 months on my bed, and this was the time when I started getting a little bit interested in Splatoon. But not really in the gameplay, but instead I was interested in its music and some fan-made animations. I remember that these were the times where I not only started to appreciate Splatoon's music, but I also started liking both the Squid Sisters and Off the Hook. Yes, even Pearl, and to be honest, I never disliked Pearl aside from in June of 2019 before I was even interested in Splatoon, and that was when I found the whole game weird. So yeah, everything was going great, but when I started watching Splatoon fan-made animations, everything changed. I watched some really scary ones and my interest in Splatoon died down to me after I saw a very scary animation of how an Octolink said to an Inkling that she would cut her head off. Because of that, I thought Splatoon was going to be a really depressing game with horror elements in it, and I again thought I won't be ever a Splatoon fan. I mean, looking back, I was kinda right about it. Splatoon being dark, especially with Octo expansion. But nowadays I appreciate those dark elements in the series to make it more grounded and fleshed out. So yeah, let's move on. Don't get me wrong, being in quarantine wasn't the best and it was deadly to go outside. But since I was always getting sick whenever I was going to school prior to quarantine, it was great for me to stay safe at home. And since I wasn't yet a teenager, I had a lot of fun at home. I was playing Mario Galaxy and 2 non-stop, just like a real virgin. I was dancing a lot with my sister to all kinds of songs. I was having parties with her, etc. It was May of 2020 when, thanks to a YouTuber Zach Scott, I finally understood how Splatoon's gameplay worked, and this was the first time when I desperately wanted to play Splatoon. I remember how often I watched Splatoon 1 and 2 gameplay videos that one morning my mom asked, "What is this game that you can't stop watching?" And I told her that the game's name is Splatoon. She liked the name so much that she used it in one of my online school projects, and I'm still wondering how she didn't get copyright striked for it. And since then, my interest in Splatoon was getting bigger and bigger with each passing day, to the point where I started even having dreams about it every night. I remember during summer I always dreamt about owning a Wii U because I wanted one. Anyways, and I was also planning to be an expert at the game before even getting the game. How can you plan to be an expert at something before you even tried it? So far from May to July of 2020 was one of the greatest times in my life, no kidding. And these were the times when I started to feel like a completely different person from months prior and even years ago. I'm not gonna tell you how exactly I used to be before becoming a Splatoon fan, but I will tell you that Splatoon made me a very optimistic person even during hard times. I was still optimistic about my future, and I eventually got Splatoon 1 and I will play the audio of my reaction. I didn't realize this change in myself until a few months later. but my interest in Splatoon didn't last forever. Okay, I'll stop being dramatic. So, fun fact, I stopped being a Splatoon fan only once in my life so far, and it was in maybe the middle or the end of August, again in 2020. So it all started when I decided to download TikTok. Worst mistake ever! And one night when I searched for Splatoon TikToks, all of them were from 2019, and I saw people saying Splatoon was a dead franchise, and I remember crying that night. And I was still would have cried if I heard something like this today, maybe even more, but let's get back on track. But prior to that night, thanks to a cosplayer from TikTok, I heard of two things that piqued my interest, not only in those two, but in cosplay in general, and those two things were Vocaloid and Danganronpa. Yeah, they're very similar, aren't they? And I remember how long it took me to realize what Vocaloid even is. Lol. Anyways, after the depressing night of me thinking Splatoon was dead, on the next day I introduced my sister, who is younger than me, to both Vocaloid and Danganronpa, and I asked her, should I stay a Splatoon fan or should I move on and focus on my two new interests? And she said that I should move on, and I agreed to. I don't know why did I ask my sister, of all people, what should I do with my life, especially when she was only 5 at the time. Well, I was 12, so yeah. And for the rest of the year, I was both a Vocaloid and a Danganronpa fan, plus of other things later on. And don't get me wrong, my life was still fun, and I was still the optimistic, energetic person I was when I was a Splatoon fan, but it didn't really feel the same, especially during the days when I couldn't stop using TikTok. With Splatoon, there was some sort of charm that was missing from both Vocaloid and Danganronpa. Another fun fact is that this was the last time in my life so far when I was even remotely interested in Danganronpa, while I was constantly revisiting Vocaloid even after I stopped being a fan of it. And also nowadays my sister is kinda into Vocaloid. It was in December when I realized how Splatoon changed my life so much, to the point where I couldn't recognize myself from the times before I heard of it, and I still can't to this day. You know how in game Marina and many Octolings whose lives were affected so much by the calamari incantation to the point of feeling like entirely new people and having better lifestyles? Well, I think I was also one of these Octolings. Before we move on to the next chapter, I want to clarify that I don't hate Danganronpa, I just think it really isn't for me. Next chapter. Now this was a big moment for Splatoon fans, including me. So one day after the Nintendo Direct, February of 2021, I was for the last time a Mario fan, and my big dream was to go to Super Nintendo World because it looked magical to me. But then I saw on my recommendation page Splatoon 3 trailer. At first I thought this was a fan-made trailer that used Splatoon 2 footage or something, but then I saw that this was uploaded by Nintendo of America's official YouTube channel, and then my heart was beating loud and fast, and I decided to see this trailer. This was the thing to not only make me a Splatoon fan again, but also to eventually stop being a Mario fan. I'm not saying you can't be a fan of two franchises at once, I'm just saying that this is what happened to me. And from there, I never stopped being a Splatoon fan. But there's one more chapter of this story to be told. To be completely honest, I've never ever been this hyped for a video game's release in my life. Yes, I said in June of 2019 I was hyped for Mario Maker 2, but not that much. But for Splatoon 3, my hype was on another goddamn level. Especially when I watched the Splatoon 3 Direct. Back then, the only YouTube videos I watched were Splatoon 3 related. I dreamt about Splatoon 3. I ate, lived, Splatoon 3. And also in the summer of 2022, I decided to go to new places in my city and listen to Splatoon 2 music. And this was one of the best ideas I've ever had, to the point of feeling like I was on an adventure. So yeah, once again, Splatoon changed my life in a very unexpected way. And now on December of 2023, here I am, still loving Splatoon and still being my favorite video game franchise ever. Even if I was a Mario fan for almost my entire childhood, it didn't touch me. That sounds weird. As much as Splatoon did, to the point of feeling like this franchise was made for me. Whenever I look at Splatoon's lore compared to its gameplay, I always think to myself, I feel represented. Because when people see me on the surface, they see me as a happy, optimistic, and energetic person whose only problem is school. But there's so much more to me. There's much more to all of you, deep down. And only a couple of people care enough to know those dark things about you. Splatoon represents so many things and so many people, and thanks to Splatoon, I finally started loving myself, being optimistic, having a sense of humor, having a YouTube channel even, etc. Now I'm excited to see what Side Order will bring to the table. Thank you so much for watching, and again thank you for 1k subscribers, it means the world to me.